Hi everyone, it's John. Welcome back to my channel. It is February the 12th, 2022, and I think I should start this thing on, I just called Friday Reads on a Saturday, since I never get around to making these things until Saturday, and it usually tends to be very late on Saturday evening. So let's just pretend like it's Friday, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to read this weekend, because it is what I've already been reading for half of the weekend. I have about 4 books to talk about, and let me start with the ones that I think I showed a few weeks ago during my last Friday Reads video. This is the novel that I've been reading. This is maybe Henri de Balzac's most famous novel. It's Cousin Bette. And this is just, it is a little slice of Paris in the 1830s. It's full of venality and hypocrisy and woman chasing Lotharios and just chasing after money. It's really it's a wonderful novel about a lot of people who are a total messes of human beings. So basically we have this character, Cousin Bette, who is the cousin of one of the female main characters. They both grew up in relatively modest means, and when the novel is going on, Bette is now in her 40s. Her sister has married a man by the name of Baron Hulot. And Baron Hulot, of course, has a little bit of money. You might think he's rolling in it with the title of Baron, but he's well off enough to be comfortable. However, the Baron is also a relentless skirt chaser. Will chase anything that moves, basically. And he has ruined his entire family. Mostly his wife and his daughter, who now has no really real prospects for a dowry to get married off. But used to be living well, and now, since he pays off all of his mistresses for these beautiful young women to sleep with him, he is left kind of in a state of penury. And his poor wife, who is the cousin of Cousin Bette, is just sort of this model of Christian charity. And she knows about this, but she just doesn't do anything about it. Bette sees the life that she has led. Bette has made her way as a seamstress, basically living in poverty, maybe slightly above the poverty level. And she sees her cousin. They were both raised relatively in modest means, and she made her way up, and Bette was never given that chance. And she decides to seek revenge on the entire family. And she sets in motion a series of actions and relationships to completely ruin the Baroness, her cousin. And including, milking him dry of even more money, making her more miserable, making the life of her daughter more miserable, is just, it is something else. I mean, he's very subtle about the way that Cousin Bette is actually, behind the scenes, pulling all the strings like a sort of a marionette operator. But she's doing all of this. She's like the evil mastermind of the entire thing. I am about 80 pages to go of the 440 pages, but turning out to be just a sort of and when I say this, I don't mean to say anything bad, but a stereotypical Balzac novel, slice of life, early 19th century Paris, and all of the the shadowy people that populate it. It's beautifully written. It's if you like Balzac, it's one of his best novels, I think. Okay, so I also spoke about this last time. This is my lately my one of my more serious sort of balancing out a novel with something a little bit more serious. This is by Georges Bataille. This is The Accursed Share, Volume 1. And I am about 80 pages through a 180 page book. So, as I explained in the last video, Bataille is looking here at something he's calling economics, but it's the kind of economics that is not really addressed by classical economists. Most economists deal with problems of dearth, problems of things that we need to save, things that we need to that we don't have enough of, right? This is looking at the complete opposite problem. This is looking at the problem of what happens when you have too much of something. What is the economy of that, and how does the economy of that work out? And you might be wondering about an example. Well, take the entire Earth, for example. Every single living thing on Earth, pretty much, is responsible either directly or indirectly, or is allowed to live directly, or I mean, we can talk about like the things at the bottom of sulfur vents at the bottom of the ocean, but let's not go there. Is pretty much dependent on the sun, right? Plants, animals, 99, 100% of stuff is dependent on the sun. However, the stuff, the amount of light that gets that hits the sun, that hits the Earth's surface from the sun, is a minuscule portion of it. I mean, much, 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 much less than 1% of the sun's light hits Earth. So, it looks at things like this. Let me give you a couple of short quotes to maybe elucidate what I'm talking about here. He says, I'll begin with this basic fact. The living organism, in a situation determined by the play of energy on the surface of the globe, ordinarily receives more energy than is necessary for maintaining life. The excess energy, or wealth, can be used for the growth of a system, like an organism. If the system can no longer grow, or if the excess cannot be completely absorbed in its growth, it must necessarily be lost without profit. It must be spent, willingly or not, gloriously or catastrophically. And of course, he's not just concerned about biological systems here. Bataille is a philosopher and a sociologist, so he's also looking at cultural phenomena. And two of the things that he considers in the first 80 pages are the human sacrifices of the Aztecs and the potlatch of the Native American Indian populations. So I'll read you another little quote from about human sacrifice among the Aztecs. He says that the victim is a surplus. Again, this extra. The victim is a surplus taken from the mass of useful wealth, and he can only be withdrawn from it in order to be consumed profitlessly, and therefore utterly destroyed. Once chosen, he is the accursed share, destined for violent consumption. But the curse tears him away from the order of things. It gives him a recognizable figure which now radiates intimacy, anguish, and the profundity of living beings. So this sort of accursed share that he's talking about, this extra energy, this surfeit, has to be used again, not just in biological ways, but in cultural, sociological ways as well. And there was one other interesting quote concerning a Potlatch that I wanted to read. So Potlatch, if you're not familiar with it, is the conspicuous destruction of wealth, especially for the purpose of advertising, or not advertising, but gaining power over your enemies or your neighbors. So what happens is, for example, if you will go into war with a neighboring people or tribe, and you win, you'll confiscate their goods, which of course are now yours, and you might decide to show how wealthy and powerful you are. Burn some of your own money or whatever you barter with, or burn some of your riches or jewels or whatever. And this is not just to show off how wealthy you are. It is what Bataille argues. It's sort of like a transmogrifying way of gaining power. It's to show you, look, this is how much extra I have. I don't have to work for it. I just have it. And not only do I have it, I don't need it. And I don't need it so much that I can just destroy it. And in that act of destroying, the person gains power. I don't know if that makes any sense, but let me read this quote. And hence, giving must become acquiring a power. Gift giving has the virtue of a surpassing of the subject who gives, but in exchange for the object given, the subject appropriates the surpassing. He regards his virtue, that which he had the capacity for, as an asset, as a power that he now possesses. He enriches himself with a contempt for riches, and what he proves to be miserly of is in fact his generosity. So he really sort of gets at the paradox at the heart of this whole custom of potlatch. It's fascinating stuff. Like I said, about 100 more pages to go, and I will probably move on to the Zone book volume that contains both volumes 2 and 3 of the Accursed Share. So this is something I just started a few days ago. I ordered this off Princeton University's press. It was 70% off, and it looked interesting, so I decided to pick it up. This is Michael Hanchard's The Spectre of Race, How Discrimination Haunts Western Democracy. And I think in the review of the book, what I'll do is I'll read the inside flap, and then and then tell you what the first 80 pages were about. However, my main gripe with the book so far is that from the title alone and the inside matter on the flaps would lead you to think that the book is something very different about what it is actually about, at least so far. So from the title, The Spectre of Race and How Discrimination Haunts Western Democracy, you would think he's looking at maybe contemporary examples of democratic governments and how systems of inequality or anti-democracy or discrimination or prejudice live to some degree comfortably and to some degree uncomfortably within, along, and inside those democracies. And what the first 80 pages of this book has been so far have basically been a history of the development of comparative politics and since the late 19th century, and how the idea of difference with regard to race and discrimination and prejudice have been dealt with in the major methodological advances within comparative politics. So he talks about this one guy named Augustus Freeman, who was really big in the field before it was really a field, before it had become professionalized and had gained normative ethics and standards. And who was basically a racist who said that, what a civilization or a society needs in order to function democratically is racial homogeneity. Really not too unpopular of a view for the 19th century. And then around the 40s and 50s, people started thinking about, well, I mean, that's kind of silly. We know that, race science isn't really a thing. And started to try to take other things into consideration. But the problem there was instead the fact that they were using Western models of democracy as the exemplar. And thinking that, well, just because, some country in Central Africa or New Zealand or, Thailand didn't look exactly like France's democracy or Great Britain's democracy, that it wasn't really a democracy and was sort of second or third rate or something. So it was using Western European, Anglo-European standards, which doesn't seem as racist, but I mean, basically, there's problems with that, right? I haven't gotten to the third part, but I was really hoping for more contemporary analysis and not such a heavy emphasis on the historical development of the field of comparative politics, which is this has been so far. But I'm learning some interesting names and jotting down some interesting book titles to look into later. But it's just not quite what it's advertised as. And I think this might be a problem with university press books sometimes, because I know that, needless to say, I mean, it's almost always scholars who write these. And even though the material might be for other scholars, they try to give the books names that kind of appeal to a more broad audience, just maybe to help sales. I don't know if that is a thing, but this title is definitely much broader and much more popular sounding than the way the actual book reads and the actual content of the book. I mean, this is, like I said, the first half of the book is a history of the development of comparative politics, and you would never think that from the title. And this is not something I've actually broached yet, but I will in the next few days. We are going to read it for our discussion, our group discussion with Davud Gosling and OG Rose, Daniel, and me. We're going to have a discussion on February 21st at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time over not this entire book, not the entire set of essays in here, but one particular essay. Maybe, oh, by the way, it's by Isaiah Berlin. Apparently that was how he liked his name, how he pronounced his name, according to Gore Vidal. Because everything Gore says is the truth, right? But there is perhaps his most famous essay that he ever wrote in The Russian Thinkers, and it is The Hedgehog and the Fox. And we are going to take that one essay, about 60 pages or so, and talk about it. And, of course, if you're unfamiliar with the topic, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but the hedgehog and the fox are sort of stand-in metaphors for two different kinds of people and two different kinds of thinkers. One being someone who thinks that the world can mostly be explained in one way by one particular idea or one set of phenomenon, and the other type of person who looks for many different explanations, who looks for many different reasons and causes, and looks for a plurality of things to explain the universe, or the world, or in any particular thing they're trying to explain. So, for example, the one big idea person would be someone like Hegel or Marx, right? Marx is all about the disaffectedness of certain social classes, and Hegel is all about the movement of history through time. And of course, there are other people who think different, who draw together different threads instead of one kind of thread, and think that way. So it's going to be a lot to think about and read, but I hope. Oh God, it's been probably 20 years since I read it, so I shouldn't be talking about it too much until I actually dig into it. But that will be not this Monday, but the next on the 21st, and we'll have that discussion up sometime that week, I think. But this has been my long, bloviating, gaseous Friday Reads on a Saturday for February 12th, 2022. I will see you the next time I have some books to talk about over the weekend, whether that's 1 or 2 Fridays from now, 3 Fridays, I don't know. But I will see you then. And we'll have some book reviews for you, certainly before then. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, episode 1 of Shelf Tour 2022 goes live at noon, Texas time, Central Standard. Watch out for it if you like book tours. I'll see you then.